We are back in open. No public comment, so I will just move into welcome to Hollywood by Principal Kim Heck.
Good evening, school board, administrators, Ms. Brino. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for coming to Hollywood. I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago that you started the road show, as we call it, going from school to school. And I really, really appreciate it. I think it makes a difference that you guys come, you know, your undying support for all of our children and all of our communities is always evident. But it's just, I can't tell you how wonderful it is to have you at Hollywood School. It makes me feel included and like I belong. And that's so important to everything that we are at Hollywood. From the very beginning, we want all of our children, all of our community members to feel as though they belong. So, on your tables in front of you, I've given you each a notepad with our theme for the year. It's There's No Place Like Hollywood. And just, we end every day's announcements with, and you belong here, because there is no place like Hollywood. So, and I hope you guys know that we are grateful for your child-centered decision-making. And I want you to know that you guys belong here, too, because there's no place like Hollywood because of you guys and your leadership and decision-making. So thank you. I hope you have a wonderful cow meeting this evening.
I wondered how you learned that. Thank you, Ms. Hefner, Principal Hefner. Appreciate that. All right, so are there any proposed changes to the agenda tonight before we get into committee reports? If not, let's jump into finance with Mr. Barsati and Mr. Pitt.
So I'm going to pretty much pass it over to Jim. He's just going to go over the budget calendar, which I know we do every year, the financial projections, and the tech. And then Don's going to just touch on the technology updates, something that we do every year, but these are things that we're looking at sort of down the pipeline. Those are all sort of tied to our security assessment, so those are just sort of things that we're looking at to include in the budget going forward. And then Jim, I'll actually let him say some pretty, at least in my opinion, some pretty big news about transportation. So.
All right, we'll save that for last. One of our policies for 10, we need to have the budget calendar presented and voted on in March. So, let's see, no later than March, the board adopts a proposed budget calendar. So this is our proposed budget calendar. Indicates dates for presentations and major board actions that affect the budget. So that at the top, that's what we're doing tonight. Hopefully, you like it and we'll approve it on March 20th. And we're going to amend the current budget. There's changes to capital and some of the transfers. So we have to go through the same steps that we do when we create a new budget. So in April and May, we'll take care of the current year. And then June and August, we'll go through the steps to approve next year's budget. And then the last bullet point there is just last steps, so I get it, follow all the steps they need. And the projections, there we go. I just took last year's projections and updated with the audit that we just went over last month, where we added 3.2 million to the fund balance, but then we pulled 3.8 out and put it in, pulled 4 out to capital. So it, we're going to pull the 4 out either way, so it's nice that we put 3.2 in. And then I added the 5 FTE that were approved for this coming year, and another 1 FTE the year after. So the expenses went up by, say, 600,000 per year. So if we wanted to compare this to last year, when we projected, the last one way out on the right, when you're kind of really guessing, is 17.3 million last time we did it, and now it's projected to be 15.9 million, which we would expect it to be a little bit lower when we added 6 employees for those 10 years. So still very healthy though. Any questions on the projections?
No, I might just make a comment. I mean, part of the reason is, so I think every year we do this, that crossover gets extended. And I think my assumption on that, and maybe, I'm assuming the biggest piece of that is just the surplus that we have every year and like managing the budget and having a couple $1 million every year.
Pushing it.
So that's just helping us we're not assuming that we have that surplus each year going out 10 years. And so as that surplus continues in, it just pushes that crossover out. Am I thinking about that correctly, or is there something else?
Yes, no, that's it. And we should never get there.
Yeah, hopefully. Right.
Well, I'm assuming this assumes the max out on property taxes that the board essentially does every year.
Yes, so there's 2 years of the cap at 5%. And then I went down, I think, to 3.2. I took a 5-year average and a 10-year average and averaged those because they're pretty different, and took the average of those two numbers and took it out 10 years. So I think it's as good as any method to try and predict CPI.
Yeah, no, your projections with regards to taxes and revenue are, they're as reasonable as they can be. I mean, you're trying to do a crystal ball. The one thing that, just to, more to the video crowd here, is that we are starting to come to the end of our significant capital
Right.
drawdowns. So that's good in a way, because you won't see those big dips.
Yeah, then we can, do roof every year and a boiler every year.
You're still assuming $1 million or something for maintenance?
Right, instead of the $19 million project from a few years ago.
Yeah.
Don put together a memo here for technology. I didn't make a slide.
No, I didn't make a slide for it. I provided a memo to all of you regarding some proposed upcoming projects. They're really, for the most part, tied directly to the security and the assessment that we did. There's a new item on it related to that. So with the systems that we're looking at replacing, they're at or near end of life. Last year, we spoke about the access control system, which is our key fob system, and the camera, security camera systems. One of the things that came out of the audit was also our paging system, which is also a system that's really at its end of life. There has been some stopgap measures to keep the one at Hauser functional. We did look at, there was a proposal made to kind of do the same thing to the other systems, but even just keeping, it would cost as much or more to keep the existing ones running as it would to just get a new one. The difference is, and with each of these systems, what these systems use is kind of a legacy infrastructure in terms of cabling. These are not IP-based systems that we have. And so oftentimes the cabling is either analog or just a couple of pairs. You can see if you look up on the wall, you see the clock and speaker. That's the older system and what it would look like, or what it looks like in most all the schools. They're pretty much identical. The new systems would be IP-based. It's also power over Ethernet. So they're actually powered by that network cable as well, which means you don't have to run electrical, but you do have to run a network cable to that. So that's why there's also the network cabling proposal on there, which really is the backbone of this. So that needs to get done first. With the projects, once the cable is pulled, it's really then can be decided. I mean, not everything has to go in all at once, but at least the infrastructure's there. So if you did want to roll it out gradually, you know, 1 year, take care of, I think our focus was going to be cameras and key fobs, getting those systems up to date. And we can do the PA systems on top of that once the infrastructure's there. You could do that the following year if you'd like. But the cost of cabling is in the labor to pull the cable, not necessarily the cable itself. So what we're trying to do is make sure that is we're going to be pulling a lot of cable, or an electrician is going to be pulling a lot of cable. Let's make sure we kind of future-proof it so that we're not having to go back and do all that labor again. So
Is that pretty intensive? Like, how, are they just gonna fish it through existing conduit, or do they have to tear out walls to put new stuff in?
it's typically, for the most part, the conduits are there.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
ceiling tiles, so
Oh,
it's
that's
hallways
true,
and
ceiling
ceiling
tiles, yeah.
tiles and that
Okay.
type of stuff. So it is something that you typically won't do, you won't do during the course of a school day.
Mhm.
We're targeting summer, and then if some of the work has to happen, once school begins, in second shift type
It
stuff.
becomes night work.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay.
With,
How do you go about, and this is perhaps too detailed, but how do you go about future-proofing cable? I mean, you don't know what this latest new shiny thing is gonna be in 15 years.
well, future-proof in the sense that you pull some extra cable. You may pay a little bit more to have an extra cable there. Well, and actually, with regards to like the PA systems, in most of the classrooms, in every school, I believe, except for Hollywood, when these were done, where the projectors are, they pulled an extra cable. So we won't need, for the sake of projectors, we're gonna use those, where there is existing cable, we'll use it, because we don't use them for our projectors. We can use them for the PA and clocks. So the areas where that aren't cabled in most of the schools are the speakers that happen in, you know, the hallways and the office areas and then smaller offices. Yeah.
And I can, from like that's generally what a lot of companies do. When you do a build out, you pull more cable than you need.
Yeah.
So,
So even to, for instance, at our entrances, where we'll probably look to have a camera, key fob, okay? And then we'll probably pull an extra in the event that we do want to do, one of the projects we've looked at in the past is outdoor wireless. Well, let's pull that cable there, so if we do an outdoor access point, that cable at least is near an exterior. Other technologies there's a lot of technologies that are going over, that are making use of, even lighting. Even now, LED lighting in a lot of facilities, it's all network cabling. So, yeah,
I know,
it's-
there's wireless controls for lighting and.
yeah, so the power over Ethernet is really what the cable is being run for. The nice thing with the systems in terms of there's a level of integration with, for instance, the paging. Like right now, our paging and our clocks are separate. They're integrated at that point, but we've moved from analog clocks to digital clocks that also then provide a level of even, digital messaging on those clocks, those displays. So you do also have that functionality with the newer systems.
When you, go on, sorry.
I was gonna say, even with that digital signage, it can be in a hallway. You can actually have just a scrolling digital signage that can be then programmed for that. And so there's enhanced features with that, which those are also security features as well.
When you go digital clocks, are you going to digital displays, or are you sticking with our standard hands and?
It would be a digital display. So it'd be the speakers that we've looked at are an integrated speaker with a built-in display to display the time but they can display a message or a scroll on it as well.
Hopefully the last question. How did you develop the estimated budgets?
I'm getting some quotes. So my thought is that these are going to be on the higher end or close before they actually go out. So this is, so these are quotes that we've received. And we've looked at some, and also based on some of the systems that we've looked at, which we are starting to key in on the specs of which systems, and we're doing, at our administration center, we're kind of doing a proof of concept of a couple of the systems too.
So it's been a few years since I've been out of the technical infrastructure game, but in terms of future-proofing, where you're talking of network cables of essentially doubling up on them, making the capacity redundant as opposed to buying the latest, I guess I'm thinking for when I was involved in it, that technology had essentially reached its max, or at least was kind of close. I don't know if
The
that's
speeds keep on getting,
okay.
there's like Cat 6E, but now it's even going to Cat 7. I don't know that we need to go, for this, I don't know that we really need to go on the latest with that. I think Cat 6E is gonna be really fine and meet all the needs, really, especially for what they're being used for. I mean, essentially what we power is access points. Currently, really access points and phones, currently. And then we'd be layering on these speakers and cameras, which on the back end, and also built into this is a level of, we'll need additional switching, switch gear. We've been going through the closets, and when the infrastructure was originally put in, oftentimes the classrooms are over-ported for what they really need in terms of the number of ports in a classroom. And in some instances, there may be multiple ports that are patched and plugged into a switch, but they're not really used, so those are essentially available switch ports. So we've been going through and just unplugging items that aren't lit up. And then, if we get a call that something's not functional, then we go plug it back in. We identify the area. So I think we're going in with, like 150 easy available ports. So those are all things that where we wouldn't need to purchase an additional switch for.
I might be showing my age or ignorance or both, but I guess when you're talking about switching from the current clocks to digital displays, I'm wondering, would that affect some classrooms? Are we still teaching kids how to read clocks?
I think actually, when I've talked to some staff informally about it, they're like, "Oh wow, that's great," because I think a lot of kids don't read analog clocks because they don't see them in their homes, they don't see them out in public, they're just not there. Not that it's not a great skill, but
Yeah, and that was.
we can keep some for the, if the Smithsonian doesn't want them, we can probably keep some. in the clocks.
That was actually kind of where I was going. I don't know that I want to necessarily close the door on certain things that force our kids to think a little harder about relating to the world. But I realize that may be just me.
Can I ask a question about the replacement cycle estimates on here? So when the new projected projects will have longer longevity
Yeah.
than
The old
old,
demo,
right?
yes.
Okay.
And I would kind of think of it, and not that, I'm not saying that this is the technology, but if you think of it, like even in terms of like the modern day television versus the older television that was bulbs and, there were different types of components. I mean, these are digital components. The current PA system at Hauser is about the size of a larger than average refrigerator. Okay. The new PA system could fit in my hand.
Oh.
And that's the difference. I mean, it's not using a huge processor that's going to heat up, or it's very much. I was kind of shocked when I said, "Well, where's the rest of it?" And it's like, no, they're like, this is it. Just
Cool.
So. Oh, the web presence. That's right. Let's not forget about that. So we have decided to kind of refresh our web presence. in switching from Edleo to Apogee, I think Martha had forwarded some links to some other districts that are using Apogee. Apogee has some features that I think will benefit in us telling our story better. Has a lot more capabilities in terms of ease of posting, and it'll allow for a larger, it will allow staff to make submissions on things to post to the feed, but it goes right to the principal for approval. So it will, I think it'll really encourage more to post, and therefore just making it just richer content, more relevant content, real-time type stuff.
Will it help with the navigation too? Because I
Yes.
struggle. Even when I know what I'm trying to look for, sometimes I struggle remembering where it's at and like the links and everything.
Well, one of the big components of this is that there is an app for it. Okay, and the app is a much cleaner it's not like you're getting a replication of the website. So it's a cleaner version geared towards parents and what you really need to access. Like on the main, when you launch it, it's going to be news, events, lunch menus, and documents that are relevant to you.
And to budget and the audit?
Yes, and
No,
these
yeah,
slides
make
as
sure
well
they
have a big component.
When did we go to Edleo?
I believe it was about 7 years ago.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's familiar to me, but been here too long, I think.
And I really do think that if you have some time to look, we actually had our kickoff meeting on Tuesday with Apogee. Timeline to launch, they could get it out like before the end of May, but we'll wait until after the school year, like right after the school year, just because
Yeah.
when parents, if they're looking for something, we don't want to create that, where is it now?
Yeah.
But they've already, walking into the first meeting, they provided some mock-ups of what it could look like, and we're kind of in the process of, pick and choose, and we'll have a mock-up for you, but we can share those links as well.
Yeah, no, I mean-
And what they, and you'll see some of the components I think you'll like.
That's what I was gonna ask, if through like our community partnership groups or anything, we're soliciting feedback on what would be something for like the app, like what would be useful, a link to Pushcoin, a link to add, have a negative balance, let me add some money, or what parents or, community members would feel most beneficial, in something like an app. Cause what you're saying sounds great. Pick
And
a
we're
link
gonna,
to Pushcoin
Don's gonna
from-
preview with parent leadership
Oh, perfect,
team.
okay.
Maybe I should have you preview with family community partnerships
That's-
also, just because those are two, nice opportunities we have for some two-way communication with families.
What's our current renewal?
Our current renewal, I believe, is around $8,000 a year. Yeah,
That's good enough,
Yeah.
Don, you don't have to.
And one thing we are looking at as well, and I didn't get into this because we really need to look at the feasibility of it, is Apogee has some communication components that we now use with School Messenger. So there may be an opportunity to move away from School Messenger. There are some things unrelated to that parent messaging component that we do use School Messenger for a digital, secure e-send of documents to parents. And so what we're trying to do is, for whatever School Messenger can do that Apogee can't, we're trying to find an alternative that could do that at a lesser cost, because we do pay about, for the School Messenger component, is about $7,000 to $8,000 a year, which that's all our messaging. It's how we've done report cards. But we've even moved away from the report card component. Now that's all via PowerSchool. So our hope is that we'll be able to move away from School Messenger and kind of be a wash
potentially-
cost-wise.
And potentially.
Exactly.
Break
Yeah.
even.
Will it be easily manipulated? Can we make updates fairly easily if we want to change things around, or is there
Yeah, if they're, in terms of like the design,
Yeah.
yes, the design, they're very flexible on the design. So for instance, one of the examples they used is like your events, like your calendar events. They have some that are more of like swipe and scroll, some are more static, and then you enter it, you know, but the components they can swap out very easily. If one thing's not working for us, if we're getting some negative feedback on it, they have different layouts and formats for the different components
Yeah.
that they can kind of substitute.
Okay.
So it does
I'm just
allow
thinking
for-
like when we, after we launch, if we get feedback of stuff, like
Yes,
we could
they-
move things around fairly.
It's something that they actually, you know, said, if, you know, if something isn't working for you, or you need a different design, we can always pick and choose. It's, even when we shared they provided 3 mock-ups, you're gonna see components that may be like on one, but it's not on the other. We can pick and choose and see what it looks like with all the components we like together.
They basically have a box of widgets and we can put them together. however
Yeah,
we want.
essentially,
Okay.
yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Security for making those changes externally, I would suppose, it's follows the latest standards or, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it'll all be done multi-factor.
Mhm.
And I haven't seen, again, we just had the kickoff meeting, but they do integrate with the social media accounts that we have. So the principals manage, for the most part, the social media accounts.
And then there's a part that's almost like, I'll say pseudo social media, where like we can post that they look like social media, but they can post right to the website.
It's- Yeah, that's their
And then it can also
feed.
go out to
So what their
Instagram,
feed, at the
feed-
point at which, if somebody wants to create an item, it goes to the feed and to the social media through, from one entry. So you're essentially posting to your live feed and your social media sites simultaneously because they're integrated.
Which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's consistency of message.
Yes.
And we talked about wanting to be more consistent among our 5 buildings also, so we thought that would help with that.
Cool. I'm excited to see it.
We'll send you links.
Mm.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you.
Transportation.
All right.
Dave said we have exciting
Mhm.
stuff to talk about.
I think it's like,
So since the pandemic, it's been difficult to get transportation for our sports teams. I think most of them are just concentrating on the schools that they transport the students all day, and then they're not looking for extra small business, I guess. So periodically, I've contacted companies that I've heard some districts using, or I just one time just did Google and give me everything within 10 miles and send an email to them. And finally, this time in November when I did it, I did get a positive response from AM bus company. And I got some references from them and they checked out. And then I asked Chris Harvalis and Tom Burke, who usually schedule a bus, if there's a way to, we could test them and then decide if we want to do more next year. So they're gonna do maybe 6 or 8 away cross-country meets, and hope it goes well, and then we can decide what we want to do next year. But I assume we want to get back to not counting on parents to get our students there all the time.
I would appreciate that.
So I'll
I know
update
the
you
pro-
after.
I know the problems we had before were as you mentioned, the businesses were putting their real attention to their main contracts, and as a result, sometimes buses would come really late or not come at all.
Right.
I don't know if there are any protections against this or what the vendor has to say about that.
Well, the salesperson tells you they'll be on time.
I mean, that's also why we're trying, I mean, we're not signing a contract with them.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was gonna ask that, so
Yes.
our test is, did they
Right.
show up? Did
Yeah,
they show up on
exactly.
time? Did they?
Right, and that's,
yeah.
you know, we'll
Our
test it
driver's
this
not-
year.
Our requirements are not that complicated.
Right, yeah,
They're pretty much provide a service at the time and
yeah.
do it well.
And, I mean, they could, after this test, say that they don't want to do it too, I guess, but let's find out. Hopefully it can work for everybody.
Okay. I mean, outside of just the convenience factor of get on a bus and go and not having to worry about parents, like, the liability behind it.
Right.
I would
Yeah.
much rather have a bus company and just be, much more
Yeah.
organized on it, so, yeah, and honestly, like, the cost jump was a bit, I was like, oof.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't know, we don't go that far, so what are we talking, like $500 a trip?
Yeah,
Like,
the-
that feels every bit worth $500, so to just have it more seamless and the liability component is what I'm most concerned about, so. Glad we got it out. Thank you for putting all the work in. I mean, it sounds like from what you've written and everything, you've tried to reach out to a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
different companies, so.
Yeah, we kind of feel the same way about the liability, so.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else have any questions before we move on?
Thank you for continuing to pursue that, Jim.
All right, then Education Committee, Ms. Kalick.
I'm gonna turn it to Angela to talk about the curriculum review for science and ELA.
Good evening, everybody. In the board packet, there was a memo, but I'll just briefly talk to it, and then if you have any questions, you can let me know. Starting with science, as you know, we've been looking at a science curriculum we started last year, a committee of 12 teachers, 2 at each grade level, started last year looking at science to see first if our current resource met our needs, or if we might need to look at a different resource. And we did determine last year that we needed to look at a different resource. And so this year, that committee looked for resources that followed the next generation science standards, engaged students, provided methods for assessing student knowledge, was user-friendly, and incorporated science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, otherwise known as STEAM. We decided to pilot 2 science programs. They are Science Studies Weekly and Mystery Science. And we finished Science Studies Weekly before winter break and are working on Mystery Science now, piloting Mystery Science now. These 2 programs both address most of those previously mentioned needs, but we have noticed that they have a weaker STEAM component. And so as a result, the committee has also discussed the possibility of a supplemental STEAM program for all of our elementary students. We're exploring those programs now and looking at possible implementation ideas for how we would look at implementing STEAM lessons into the school day. So at the end of this month, the committee is going to regroup to discuss the 2 resources that they piloted to determine which program best meets our needs, our district science instructional needs. And we plan to come to the board with a recommendation for a new science curricular resource in the beginning of April. And then with our English language arts work, we started in September of this school year with a committee of 12 teachers, which is 2 teachers at each grade level, all 5 reading specialists, a special education teacher, and 1 of our English language learner teachers. We also have a principal representative that is on the committee as well. And we met monthly, starting with determining our district's English language arts needs, what was working with our current resource, what we felt was missing with our current resource. We developed a rubric that reflected the needs that we saw, that we would like a new curricular resource to have. We had 6 curriculum publishers share their resources with the committee. One of those 6 was the updated version of our current language arts resource, Ready Gen. It's now called My View. And of those 6, following those 6 presentations, the committee determined that the 2 that best met the needs of the rubric from the rubric were Amplify Core Knowledge Language Arts, which is otherwise known as Amplify CKLA, and Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Into Reading. These are 2 programs that are also being implemented in nearby districts, so I'll be talking with those districts as well about their implementation process and what they're seeing. The 12 classroom teachers on the committee have recently finished piloting 1 to 2 modules from Into Reading and started this week piloting 1 to 2 modules from Amplify CKLA. Following the pilot of Amplify CKLA, which will end mid-April, we'll reconvene to debrief and determine which curricular resource best meets our teachers and students' predetermined needs based off that rubric. And then we plan to make a recommendation for a new curricular resource by the beginning of May. So any questions for me on these 2 curricular pieces of work?
And for both, they would start in the fall?
Correct. Yep.
You mentioned April for the science curriculum recommendation with the STEAM recommendation, then also be alongside that, or are we thinking that's separate?
The hope is that the STEAM recommendation will be alongside that, but given that there's also work to talk about what implementation would look like, that might have to hold off.
With the current popularity of Steam and kind of, anyway, is there a lot out there?
There
A lot
are,
of
so,
supplemental programs that don't try and do everything, but get to what you want.
yes, there are
Does that make
supplemental
sense?
STEAM programs. We have in the past years looked at a program called WAS Ed, which works with the West 40 Regional Office of Education. So we would go back to looking at that program. There's a STEAM program called Project Launch, which is the elementary version of Project Lead the Way, that we're going to look at. And then there were two other resources. I was talking with our librarian information specialists, and there are two other resources that they were aware of that we were going to explore as well, and I don't have those names off the top of my head. But these are strictly focused on STEAM lessons, strictly focused on STEAM activities that are age appropriate K through 5th. And so we'll be talking about what potential implementation could look like and when and who could provide that implementation.
So in terms of pricing, are these all roughly comparable, or do we have that established in advance, or was that be something that starts negotiating once the pilot is decided upon?
The STEAM programs or
Either, I guess.
any of the curricular resources?
Yeah.
Pricing comes now. I'm working on pricing for the two science programs, the two ELA programs. And then once we narrow down what we're looking at for STEAM, I'll work on it then too. It happens simultaneously with the pilot because resources funding is part of the rubric as well. We want to be cost effective, but we also want to make sure we're not just picking the cheaper
Sure.
program if it doesn't meet the needs we have. So I get the prices while we're working on that, and then that will be part of the whole picture when we're determining which resource we'd pick.
Mm-hmm. All right, makes sense.
What's the issue with science versus STEAM? Is it just not, like, my understanding of STEAM is it's more like physical interaction with the concepts versus like textbook? Is that the issue? Like, there's not enough of the physical, like what?
Yeah, that's
what's lacking, I guess, is maybe what I'm asking.
That's a great question. STEAM is more geared towards what types of projects and activities lend themselves to encompassing the science, the technology, the math, the engineering, all in one type of culminating project activity. So you might do lessons that lead up to, the thing that comes off the top of my head was like coding OSBOTs is one of the things that WASED has. So you talk about coding, you talk about the pieces that lead up to coding, the mathematics part of it, the engineering part of it, and then the kids, the culminating activity is actually coding these OSBOT pieces. Where the science curricular resources that we're looking at are teaching pieces of that, but it doesn't have that culminating piece that puts it all together into a culminating activity.
Okay. So the science is just one component,
Correct.
as the name would suggest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More projects, more hands-on.
Yes.
Yeah,
is the
okay.
word, yeah. Not that there aren't some projects and some hands-on activities in the science curriculum.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
trying to
right, yeah,
get my
yeah.
head around. So it's
Yeah.
just a more comprehensive
Yes.
view of all the disciplines instead of just the science component of it.
Correct.
So, okay.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, who do we have next? We have policy committee, Ms. Guy.
Yeah, I'm just here to remind you to do your homework. As everybody I think at this point knows, we kind of adopted this practice of following ISBA's calendar as a way to just continually be reviewing our policies. Again, we have a really great process via our press updates, a way for us to familiarize ourselves with the different sections throughout the year. So right now, for those that have the time and energy, focusing on Section 5, which focuses on personnel, and they do, the way that they create their calendar is keeping in mind what issues come before boards at certain times of year. So a lot of it for us to our Press Plus will refer to like our collective bargaining agreement, et cetera. So just something to note, but no additional action other than if time allows, review the section 5 of personnel under our policies. And of course, if there's any questions, Press 113, the more recent update we did, had some updates to that section already. So some of us are familiar with some of them as of late.
This one is easy to find because it's under school board policy manual. Boom.
Oh,
I never have a problem finding the policy
I
manual.
always thought it was like on board. I couldn't find it on board book. I don't know why I always thought like it was attached somewhere. I also thought we attached the calendar
Well,
review
different
cycle.
sections, things we voted on will be in board book, right?
I
But
just thought like
Yeah,
under
but the
links,
whole
like
policy
important
manual,
links.
and it's more, I think, I always access it off the website.
Yeah,
The
same.
policy manual is not linked in board book
It's
anywhere,
not,
right,
no.
Kathy?
Correct.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Not the-
I
I know we tried to put
Link-
other informational
Didn't it
items
link
off
the
to the
calendar?
side,
Yeah.
but yeah.
The ISB, like the 1-year monitoring calendar.
bless you.
I thought we had, but again,
And
we'll
that-
give
yeah.
you friendly reminders, but I thought there was a place where it was just visually there so that you can kind of see what's coming up throughout the calendar year.
So when
Right
we
now
do
it's-
the new website, we want to try to spice it up.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, some active,
gonna
you
go
know, GIFs
front,
or
yeah.
things in it? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's it. And then I don't know when the next press update's gonna come, but
We haven't heard.
I don't know. I know.
It'll be tomorrow.
I hope it's like after spring
Yeah,
break or something.
speaking of it, we'll
Right.
definitely
No.
bring it.
I feel like
Well, there's
you're
15
right.
sections in this one, and some of them are rather long, so.
Oh, section 5? Yeah, it's a
hold off on
pretty,
any more press
yeah,
reviews.
it's a pretty lengthy one. But again, a lot of, not a lot of them, but some are like, refer back to your collective bargaining agreement, refer to your, so.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the reminder. On our new practices following the calendar. All right, Mr. Arnold, you have anything on facilities?
We have a meeting next week, and I'm sure we will discuss the current status and the preparation by the contractor. We know that the contractor has adjusted his schedule, and so we will have a little bit less disruption in the parking lot, which everybody on the campus is certainly appreciative of. And then we've always got the maintenance items to discuss, and then we're looking at smaller projects as well.
All right. Thank you for that. And then, Mr. Hunt, Ms. Claps, anything for personnel committee?
We did meet last week, and most of what was discussed had to do with personnel contracts, and is best covered in closed session.
I'm assuming no other public comment, Kathy? Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing them, I'm just making sure nobody's in the hall or anything. Okay, so that brings us to future meeting dates. March 20th, 2024, we'll have a regular business meeting at 7 PM in the Hauser Learning Resource Center. April 3rd, 2024, we'll have a committee of the whole meeting at 7 PM in the library at Blythe Park School. April 17th, 2024, we will have a regular business meeting at 7 PM in the Hauser Learning Resource Center. And we have some more discussion for closed session tonight, so we're gonna go back into closed for, I guess I'll just say both of these things because I think they're interrelated. The appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees or the district, or legal counsel for the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity, and collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees.
I think was it said there will be no action?
There will
Well, I
be
guess
no
we're not
action.
in regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Kathy, can you call the roll?
Okay, Mr. Marhol?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Ms. Gunn?
Aye.
Ms. Kalick?
Aye.
Ms. Claps?